Welcome to the SJ Child Show. This episode is sponsored by Water and Body Basics. Visit 3440 South, 5600 West, West Valley City, Utah. Mention SJ Childs today.
Hey, and welcome to the SJ Childs Show. I'm your host, SJ Childs, and I have a very special guest today, Rod Silva. And Rod is a CEO coach. I mean, if you could be anything in the world, wouldn't you want to be coaching the most powerful people that you could find? Thank you so much for being here, Rod.
Yeah, no, thanks for the invite, Sarah. I'm excited to be here.
And tell us about maybe what got you started into coaching. Tell us about what you do.
Yeah, so it's honestly like a super long story, but trying to put it like in like long story short kind of thing. Basically, for some reason, I still can't understand. I think it's just like my DNA. Like I have the entrepreneurial in DNA. I was never able to work for somebody. There was always something, because I've been always looking to like, how can you do things better? How can you improve? How can, like my own views. And, when you work for somebody, it's really hard if you don't share the same culture, all these things. So since I can remember my first jobs as a server or like, at little jobs, like entry jobs, growing up, I could never last in those because it was like, this is horrible. I hate this. So I went to part of like education, like to engineering school and then culinary school. And then I've been, over multiple things, went to Harvard Business School for part of my master's in business, the modern applied psychology university too. So like I've been into like all these different things because I thought I didn't know, it's like, I don't know what I want to do. And then later I realized that that's what I do. What I like to do is like learn new things and then help other people apply those things. And that's kind of like what led me into coaching. And, most of the things that I like is like related to business. I started with marketing, and from there I learned that it's not just about marketing, but you also have to know about, sales and work culture and leadership and like all these different things that are part of a business in order to be successful, on the long run. So it was like, okay, I like learning about all these things. So I try to consume, as much as possible in learning on, around these topics so that I could then later kind of like help other business owners and CEOs apply these principles, but in a shorter period of time. So they don't, because, as a business owner, like we were talking before, there's like, you don't have a lot of time to, just sit down and relax and just learn and learn and learn. So you have to run your business, right? And then you have to, there's trade-offs like, okay, you have to learn, you're going to sacrifice time with your family, etc. So I decided to do that, kind of like learn so that the other CEOs don't have to, right? And it's just like, okay, I consume all the knowledge. Here it is, instead of reading a book, here's your summary, like your 10-page summary, instead of reading a 500-page book. So that's
Right.
pretty much like the story. And then, yeah.
That's fantastic. And it's so important. And I like that we talked about kind of the mindset that you also need to have. I think that you and I are very alike in that entrepreneurial spirit that I was never when I had that desk job, I just dreamed of the days that I would be on my own time doing whatever I wanted to do in my own. And luckily, both of us made that to fruition for ourselves. Yeah, let's talk about like the project you're working on, helping these CEOs that are working so many hours, helping them balance and find a better management system for their own lives.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest issue is like we think that we need to work more or work harder to get more results. Because you see these like quotes and people talking about, you have to work hard and do more and do more and, go for longer hours. And they say like, yeah, I have to work like 80 hours a week, 120 hours a week, whatever, and then sacrifice the rest to be successful. But the truth is that there's a certain point where no matter how hard you work, you're not going to move the needle any further. Like it's where it hits the top, and from there, no matter how much more you do, the results are not going to change, right? You hit like that glass ceiling, and it's like, well, now it's not about how hard you work, but it's how smart you work, right? Being like productive and efficient with your things. So that's kind of the approach. And for that, that involves so many things. How can you work like smarter, and changing that mindset on things that, well, I don't need to work, harder. I just need to find a better way of doing things in a short period of time. And there's many ways of doing that. So, and kind of like what you were saying, like, what's the point? And I went through this. Like, I worked so hard for many years because it wouldn't make sense. I always say, like, practice what you preach, and walk the walk, and all these things. And I feel like I wouldn't be able to tell people like about these things if I hadn't been there myself, right?
Yeah.
So for many years I worked like I didn't know. Well, still to this day, I don't know what day it is. If it's not because of my planner and my calendar, I would have no idea of what day I'm living in or what month, or and there was a point where I was like, no, I can't allow myself to watch movies, to do the things that I like. Like, I would be like, oh, do you watch Netflix? That's a waste of time. Like, why would you do that? Like, and be like, I don't have time for friends. I don't have time for family because I'm so focused on my project because I want to be successful. And at the end of the day, you compare yourself to other people, right? And that's why you're like, oh, I have to achieve that.
Mm.
So, to me, that's kind of what took me to like, no, there's a better way. And once I found that better way of balancing things, because like you were saying, what's the point of like achieving all this success? Like, yeah, you're going to achieve success for sure. But then what hit me was like, okay, now I'm at this point where I might not be where I want to, but I'm okay. I'm doing well. I have nobody to share this with because I pushed everybody away.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was one thing. And the other thing that really hit me was when somebody would ask me, oh, that's great. Like, what do you like to do outside of work? What is that? What do you mean outside of work? Right? It's like, what
I work.
And I'm like, well, I don't know. And that really like scared me. Like, somebody asked me, what do you like to do outside of work? And I honestly had no idea of what are the things that I like outside of work. Like, I just didn't have anything else. I had like no hobbies, like nothing else that wasn't related to work. And then that part of like, well, I've achieved this and now I have nobody to share that with. Like, even like a little win that, like my client got this result, or like whatever it is. And it's like, okay, who do I share this with? Like, I don't have anybody. So when those things kind of hit me, I was like, okay, I need to make a change because this is not what I thought, success would mean, or like, this is not something I can call myself. Like, it's success,
Yeah. What do you think? What kind of steps do you think you started taking to make changes?
I think the first one is going back to that mindset of being like, well, you can't just deprive yourself. It's like, if you think about it, it's like people who try to lose weight, get into like a healthier lifestyle. And they're like, oh, I have to go, all in from week one, like exercise like crazy, and, deprive myself from eating like all these things. And then, it's like 2 weeks and they hate it. So, they stop, or they, cheat a little bit, and that turns into, instead of a cheat day, it turns into a cheat week. So, you have to take like those baby steps, right? And acknowledge that change doesn't happen overnight, and the reason why you are doing what you're doing, right? So in that case, with the health and all that stuff, it's like, it's not just because you want to look better just because again, maybe you're comparing yourself to somebody. It's, thinking of the real benefits, the things that you're going to be able to do, how you're going to feel, be more energized, be more confident, and knowing that it's going to take time, right? So the same thing happened to me of like realizing this, like, okay, was redefining what success was for me and the life that I wanted to create, instead of being like, well, this is what people say that it's success, and everybody just measuring of how much money they're making and how big their companies are, and like all these things, what type of car you drive, like, the typical thing like you hear, like just putting up with the Joneses, that kind of thing. And it's like, no, what do I want for myself and the life that I want to create, like for myself, based on who I am and who I want to become. Right. So the first step to me was redefining that vision of what success means to me and the life that I personally want to accomplish and that I want to live, outside of other people's opinions or definitions of success.
Yeah. Isn't that truth? I think that living by other people's expectations can really be damaging, especially for our youth who, no offense to great parents out there, but the parents who put unneeded and undue expectations on their youth and teens to be the person that they think they should be, when you finally find out, if you go through life trying to be who you're supposed to be, you won't ever have the chance of being who you actually are. And that is a probably kind of that redefining moment that you had when you thought, well, wait, what value am I bringing? Like, I'm a valuable person. I have all this valuable knowledge, but what value am I really bringing? Right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like it's like that part of like sharing not only part of like the ego of like, oh, I've accomplished this and I wanna like, hey, like share it with somebody, but then it's like, how am I making someone's life better? And
Mhm.
that's right now kind of like the my motto, or like the principle that I live by is like, how am I making someone's life better on a daily basis? I'm not like, well, here and then, or whatever. It's like on a daily basis, how am I doing that? Even if it's sometimes something as simple as like holding the door for somebody, or helping
Mhm.
somebody or someone with something, making a post about that's going to be useful. It could be a tiny thing, right? But just giving back, and just
Yeah.
making, and I know it sounds like a cliche and all these things, but trying to make the world a better place.
Oh, yeah.
But it is, imagine if we all had like that mindset of trying to make the world a better place, even with tiny, tiny, tiny actions. I mean, 8 billion, 7 billion people doing that on a daily basis, it would be huge.
Yeah. Exactly. And, you don't know this about me, but I have a son with autism. And for me, fighting for his inclusion, the understanding that he is this amazing, incredible person, even though the world perceives him as different, or however they wanted to, like the person and the beauty that I see within this being is just extraordinary, like outworldly, it's just, he's amazing. But like you said, the mindset that people have, if the world can just be a little bit kinder and work on just baby steps, right? Thanking the thankless people. That's, I love to do that. I love to show my children, wherever we're going, hey, thanks for washing the windows, like thanks for picking up this garbage, I'm sure nobody's thanked you for that in a long time. And the reaction, and I don't care what kind of reaction I'm going to get from people, but it's always nice to see that, like, they're seeing me for who they are. And you really give people like their own, you empower them, right, with those kinds of things. And I'm sure that that's a lot of what you do in your coaching too, is empowerment.
Yeah, and you have a huge point there, and that's something that I bring to companies when I consult with them. And because then again, working with and after that, I was like, okay, I'm gonna try one time to work with this 7-figure company, because they wanted like, yeah, we want you full time for like our marketing and all these things. I was like, okay, let's give it a try, let's see if that works. And the biggest thing that I learned from working at that place was what not to do,
Mm,
right? And
valuable information.
and going back to that point, like one of the things that I learned is how not to treat people, right?
Mm,
With that work culture. And like you said, like just thanking somebody for what they do, and like noticing their efforts. And and that's the biggest thing to me when it comes to work culture, and that applies in everything, with your family, with your friends. It's just what it's known as words of affirmation kind of thing, if with the love languages and all that stuff. And it's just telling people, making them feel that what they're doing matters, that
mhm.
they matter, that it's not just, they're not just people there, nobody are noticing them, or what they do is just irrelevant. Like, no, like whatever it is that they're doing, it matters.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing, like for companies and stuff like that, because you're telling your people what you do matters, even if you think that you're sitting behind a desk and doing like repetitive tasks. Telling them that those things matter, and without them the company would maybe wouldn't fall apart, but they would struggle, or
Yeah.
inconvenient, whatever. Matters a lot for the mindset of the people who work there, and feeling appreciated, and that it's something that they want to put more effort into, and make them feel better about themselves, all these things. And then again, that translates to everything with your family, like telling your kids, like what they're doing matters, like, following these rules, or them being kind, or following certain things with discipline, or just, anything. Maybe they do like an act of kindness with somebody that you see, and just telling them, recognizing that it's a good thing, and that matters. And that's, then again, it's huge,
Yeah.
so, and I don't think we do that enough with our circles, with our friends, just thanking them for, and showing, that gratitude and appreciation for them. It just makes so a big difference, for them,
Yeah.
especially.
No, it really does make a big difference. And, just being able to kind of see the reactions of our friends and family when, they see our kids kind of emulating our actions and going outside of the norm, and, being kind to the people that other children might find. We all, when we don't understand things, we all face things with fear first thing, right? We come against it, we see something we don't understand. Oh no, I'm afraid, I don't understand how to deal with this situation. So the best thing we can do right now with, if you have children and you're listening, is instill those important skills for them, and learning to look at people with inclusion and with understanding and with thankfulness for just being a kind human being, right?
Yeah, and that's a big thing. Like we were saying, like I don't have kids yet, but I plan to. So a lot of what I do, when I studied like psychology, and at the modern applied psychology, like the academy, like all these things, and yeah, a lot of things with behavior. There's always things and tips and things that they tell you about like kids and behavior, and how to manage, situations, and all these things. And to me, it's obviously I pay attention to that, because even though I'm not there yet, that's in my plans, in my near future. So I want to obviously know more about that and understand. So, I can't say because I've done that, but I pay attention to that because I want to be able to apply those things when the time comes and I'm prepared. So, and like we were saying, seeking to understand before being understood, it's a big thing. And passing that or teaching that, kids, that because something is different from what they're used to, that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with it, or that there's a bad thing, or just showing that like understanding and kindness is just like, well, just because it's different doesn't mean that it's bad or it's wrong, right? And just trying to understand, like, okay, asking questions like, well, why is that different? Like,
Yes.
what's going on? And that's something really important that I learned about, for example, bullying. It's been a huge thing for the last maybe 10, 15 years, I don't know, something like that. Back when I was a kid, it was like a normal thing. It was like, oh, there was like the bully, and that's normal, so either you face it or you just like, whatever,
Run
and
away. Yeah.
and it was like, well, that's how it is, and whatever, you're gonna grow up, you're gonna move to somewhere else. And
Yes.
now it's like, there's like no tolerance, which is good. It's like there's like no, yeah, it's not tolerated, and as it should, right? Because it's not something good that should be happening.
Mm-hmm.
But then how you explain that maybe to your kids is, first like matching that of like, maybe they're angry, if they're sad about something that happened, somebody is like bullying them, or bothering them or whatever, and it comes more of the part of like matching that part. If they're angry, matching that energy, so that they understand, like they feel understood. If they're
Mm-hmm.
sad, like, okay, they're understood. And then kind of like trying to guide them into like, okay, but have you thought like, why is that happening? If that kid is being mean, do you think that maybe they're having issues at their home? Do you feel like maybe he feels, rejected, or maybe, he's got like some issues because of how he looks, or maybe other kids are making fun of him, so he needs to act this way. So you start asking questions for him to like try to understand why that kid is behaving in that way. And then being like, well, yeah, maybe, this, that, and that. So that helps kind of bring that understanding. Now, does that justify the actions? No. But then that changes a lot in the way the kids see things, because now it's like, no, I'm being bullied, or, bothered or whatever, because I'm doing something wrong, right? That's what always happens with kids. When they go through these situations, obviously they think that they're doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then that turns into other type of behavior. So when you're trying to get them to understand that it's not about them, but it's about other people with their own issues,
Yeah.
it just changes, everything. And they can be like more kind about them and even help them. Be like, hey, try to, help them in a different way because they're facing their own things. And that's why they behave in that part. And, a lot of people might think like, well, that's too complex and like all these things for like a 7-year-old, like a 6-year, but no, kids are so smart.
So
They
smart.
are the ones who underestimate their, because that's the age that defines them. Like I think it's from like 6 to 10-year-olds or something like that. That's the period of time that defines their personality, their habits, like all these things. So if you teach them those principles, like that's gonna lead her their whole life.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I agree with that. And I think that I want to touch back on something we talked about when we were talking before the show about having that positive mindset. And I, said that I'm the ultra optimist, but talk to me about having a negative positive or a positive negative and why that's important.
Yeah. So, before I used to be same thing, like the person like, oh, you have to always be positive and like find the positive thing like on every situation. And whilst that's, all well and good, and you should still try to find the positive on every situation, that doesn't mean that we don't need to consider like the worst case scenario, or when something bad happens, it's not like, well, it's fine, and just try to be positive, because I feel like what that leads to is that we're just putting up with things, and we don't establish boundaries, sometimes with people, because it's like, oh, it's okay, it doesn't matter, you stay positive. And so one part is like, you don't establish boundaries. Then again, that happened to me. I had to learn that the hard way, because trying to be like understanding and optimistic, and then you don't put boundaries with some things. So you're like, okay, yeah, I'm positive and I'm kind and understanding, but there's a point where you don't cross that line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you're in denial of those things until you're faced with it. And then you're like, okay, wait, I need to make a few changes here and put my boundaries. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It's important to have boundaries. And boundaries doesn't mean that you have to, be unkind to people. Boundaries mean that you be honest and be your authentic self and say, this is how I'm feeling. And that brings up a good point to what you were saying about recognizing the emotions in the moment of kind of that behavior when that's happening. We're trying to help our 9-year-old daughter go through those things right now. When she comes up to those, the kids down the street were making fun of me or something was happening. Well, how did it make you feel? What was that emotion you were feeling right at that moment? And normally, yeah, it's embarrassment. It's which comes back to like fear and anger, really. And then you have to help them manage through those things. So that is such an important life lesson.
Yeah, and that's huge. That's huge. And that part, I don't know where I was reading that part of thing. Well, I've been studying a lot of emotional intelligence lately, Daniel Goleman, that kind of thing. And that's the first thing, right? Like first, like labeling your feelings. Okay, when
Yeah.
the situation happens, you have to label it. I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling, like frustrated, I'm feeling angry. Like recognizing that, because if you don't label them and you're not aware of what they are, you are not able to manage them, which is the ultimate thing. Like we want to learn to manage our emotions and feelings, but we can't manage our emotions if we don't know what's causing them, what they are. So and that's something really good that I think more people should try to learn about, like emotional intelligence
Yeah.
for themselves, and for the kids as well, because like we said, like these are things that sometimes I posted a quote the other day on my Facebook that said something that was just like blew up with with the people that I have there. And it was something that said something in the context of like, try to heal yourself, or learn how to heal yourself first, so that when
Mhm.
you don't have so that when you have kids, they don't have to learn how to heal because of you, something like that.
Yeah.
So pretty much it says that you have to work on yourself and heal yourself, so that your kids doesn't have to heal themselves from having you as a parent.
Yeah.
And nowadays it's getting better, but before, we had all these things with our parents growing up, and like have our own traumas, and that's why there's like therapy and like all these things, because they had their own stuff that they didn't heal from,
Yeah.
and that passes on to their kids, and now they have to heal from that, and then it's that vicious cycle, like from generations.
Yeah.
That you see that with, things like abuse, like alcoholism or whatever, that there's only two ways: either the kid turns as their parents and just follow the same cycle, or they hate it and they just have like that negative emotions to that situation. So then they have like all this negative connotation. Let's say it's drinking, or whatever, violence or something, and it's still something that affects them,
Mhm.
and have like that negative bias towards that it's going to limit them in some way at some point,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I completely think, and I think that we have a lot of the same aligned visions in the way that, your thoughts create your actions. And if you don't train your thoughts to be bringing you fruitful actions, then you will bring whatever thoughts you're having into action. And so be careful with those things, people. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Rod, for coming on and joining me on the show today, and bringing us just some really great, valuable information and just really great conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you again for inviting me. It was
Yeah.
great.
And tell us your Facebook page, websites, anything where if people are interested to learn more about you or maybe get into your coaching programs.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's so many at this point links and things where people can find me, but the easiest way is, for most of my social media, is the one Rod Silva on Instagram, Facebook, or they can, try to find me on Facebook, Rod Silva. Just send me a friend request, or just go to my website at sevenfigureCEOs.com.
Fantastic. And I'll have all those links down in the description so you'll know where to go and find Rod. And, you can watch some, I don't know if you have any other interviews out there, but please join us for this episode and much more to come. Thank you so much for joining us today, Rod. It was great to talk to you, and we will definitely stay in contact and be in touch.
Thank you, Sarah.